Hello, today we're joined by Sanjay Maharaj of Electric Asset, who's going to talk to us about electrical planning for stratas. Welcome, Sanjay.
Thank you, Thomas. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, and I hope today that we could talk about electrical planning report, EV ready, and give out information and educate everyone to see what's all involved in electrical planning reports and EV ready plans for strata corporations.
Excellent. And you're no novice to this industry, Sanjay. Tell us all about that before we get into it.
Yes, that's a very good point, Thomas. Just a very brief background. I managed and operated a property management company for about 12 years, and our sweet spot was in the Fraser Valley. Our head office was in Abbotsford, and we managed 140 buildings, anywhere from Surrey to Chilliwack, and a few in the Lower Mainland as well. But our sweet spot was the Fraser Valley. During that time, grew the top line, bottom line, and opened a satellite office in Surrey. So we were very successful. Long story short, got an unsolicited offer to buy the company. Looked at it and thought about it. I said, and I had a good run, and time to kind of focus and do something else, something different. So sold the company in 2020. Prior to selling the company in 2020, I had actually started looking at EV infrastructure and all that. The What got me thinking about that was when the provincial and the federal government announced the EV mandate, which, as you all know, is probably going to be on hold, which mandated that all new car sales by 2035 needed to be a zero emission. So that got me thinking that we have 140 buildings. How will all our property managers and how will the strata council do all this heavy lifting? Because I know it's quite a complex issue and a lot of things involved in getting a project off the ground, getting it approved. So I started a bit of that, and my goal was to make this all very simple and understandable, where we do all the heavy lifting and make it easier for the strata manager. Because coming from the background in the industry, I knew that strata managers would not necessarily have the time to do all the heavy lifting. So that's when we formed the company Electric Asset. But when I sold my property management company, kind of gave me a good runway to kind of lean into this and started off. So we've been in business for just over 5 years. I've been very successful with hundreds of projects where we've got the building EV ready. We work with a lot of big property management companies, and we've also started doing the electrical planning report when the electrical planning report became mandatory a couple of years ago. As you may be aware, the provincial government changed legislation requiring strata properties to obtain a what is called electrical planning report. So we do that in tangent with with EV ready plans, because once we go out on site, we have the data, we collect the data. So we turn we do the electrical plan report and then turn it into an EV ready plan as well. So kind of give strata corporations two reports, with the same set of data.
Fantastic. We certainly see your name out there a whole lot. Why don't you walk us through what this means and what is your electrical planning report going to tell you?
Yeah, so as I said, this is new legislation. The provincial government wanted I guess the intent is to kind of get ahead of the curve, and every building needs to understand what the capacity is as the province, as the city, as the country moves towards net zero. So the idea behind an electrical planning report is it's a very high level report. It's not an invasive report. It basically, at a very general level, looks at what kind of equipment you have in the building, what is the current capacity based on an average 12 months of consumption data, 12-month, because you take all the four seasons into account, because you'll have your peaks and valleys in summer and winter. So you get a good grasp of what the capacity is. And then that report then further looks at it. Okay, what happens if the building wants to install EV charging infrastructure? What happens if the building down the road needs to install heat pumps? What does that capacity now look like? So, and if there's no capacity, okay, how do we address that and make sure that, what about we get renewable energy like solar, battery storage, solar power? What does that look like, right? So, in a nutshell, that's what the electrical planning report discusses, and gives a very, very broad overview to the startup corporation that, hey, you know what, yeah, this can be done or that cannot be done, and if that cannot be done, what's the solution? So it's not a big invasive report; it's a very high level report. What do you have? What happens if you incorporate EV charging, heat pumps, and what needs to be done to make the building a little bit more energy efficient if you needed to incorporate EV charging infrastructure.
Fantastic. So this simple visual is showing how power comes from the grid to the local substation or transformer. Part of it gets broken off to do the house distribution that powers your hallway lights, your elevators, your systems. Then the rest goes off to residential meters for individual condo use. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct. You've captured that very well. So if you look at that diagram there, yes, we have the grid, and then we have a substation and a transformer that comes into the building. Then it serves residential meters and panels, which are on their own. So if any owner is living in a condo, they would have their own panel, and these panels would be electrical closets in the hallways, or could be in the electrical room. So that's a separate thing. The challenge becomes more interesting is when you install EV infrastructure, it goes in parking spaces, and parking spaces, they are all tied to common property, right? So they're tied to panels that are managing, like you said, your hallway lights, your elevator, and your HVAC system. So that's what we look at and see, okay, what is the capacity of the house panel? Is there enough capacity in the house panel to basically install an EV infrastructure? So what does it look like?
Right. Right. And you study that, and that becomes the EV plan. This looks like an alternative.
Yes, so when we do the comprehensive EV ready plan, generally what we found is we've done thousands of assessments over the last few years, and I can tell you there's only been two buildings that we've come across that really did not have any capacity. So people always think capacity is an issue. That is not necessarily the case. From our experience, we found that the older the building, the better the capacity, because in those days um, things were over designed, because cost of these equipment installations were not as high as what it is today. So today, if you look at newer buildings, it still will have capacity, but not to the extent older buildings may have, because in this today's day and age, developers are cognizant of the fact of cost increases and all that. So these electrical panels are not over designed; they're just designed to be right. So what we look at is how do we manage the energy? Again, electricity energy is not a huge problem. It's not a huge issue. We can see that governments are investing in infrastructure to make sure that the grid is there to support. I've been to many conferences where utility companies are investing heavily on the grid to make sure that the grid is stable when the demand goes up. The issue becomes is how do you manage any given capacity? So at any given point in time, your building could have 5%, 10%, 20%, 30% capacity. How do we use that capacity to drive that capacity towards EV charging? That is the question, and that is the solution that works. So the good news about that is we go into a building, we don't have to necessarily uh, you know spend money on capex in upgrading the existing electrical capacity, which would cost anywhere from 100, 200 upwards to upwards of quarter million, or depending on the size of the building.
Right.
So there's no capex involved. So so that's the good news about using the existing capacity. And under BC Hydro, how they define EV ready plan is they define that the infrastructure is um, installed in the building where a parking stall. Now, so every unit gets one EV charging stall. So every unit that has a parking stall, one parking stall, has a live energized outlet within 5 meters of the parking stall. That is considered that's what BC Hydro considers to be EV ready.
Right. Excellent. So we've got these two different alternatives where you've got your EV going through the house distribution or potentially a new distribution line, and then that ties how into the electrical planning report?
So the electrical planning report. So this is the EV ready plan would be a more detail as to how the system would be designed, as to what is going where. Electrical planning report will not necessarily be this detailed. Electrical planning report will just talk about at a very high level that yes, there is capacity to install EV chargers or heat pumps, and if there's not enough capacity, what needs to happen to compensate. So if we look at heat pumps generally would go into the residential house panel meters. And generally, if you look at a house panel, they're rated at 80% capacity. So if you have a 100 amp panel, let's say, they're rated at 80%, and most of the time, they would be at capacity. So the electrical planning report will probably say that, okay, if you need to install a heat pump in your unit, what needs to give. So we would look and see, okay, you got baseboard heaters, so if you want a heat pump, you got to take out baseboard heaters to compensate for the load. So those are the kind of things that would look at on the heat pump side of things, would be on the residential meter. On the EV infrastructure side, as I said, most of these are installed on the house panel because they're common power. We can allocate it to individual residents. So they would look at the house panel and say, what is the house panel's capacity? What capacity does it have? So what we do is we will install an energy management system, and this energy management
Right.
system it does a number of calculations every few minutes to see what the available power is, and then it'll take that power. So if there's any 10% power available, it'll direct that to whatever number of EV chargers are plugged in. If there's 20%, it'll direct it to those EV chargers that are plugged in.
Fantastic. I just went over the visual that showed that whole heat pump versus baseboard heaters on the residential side. I think we're going to get into some more slides that talk about that energy management system. Before I get there, on the heating and cooling side, it looks like there are some pretty fundamental questions that you need to investigate when you're putting these reports together for a strata.
Yes, and these are the basic questions that we look at, and the question that we would ask, for future adoption of heat pumps or whatever the equipment would be, and this would be a guide to compiling the electrical planning report.
Excellent. Excellent. So that's great. And we're on to the EV charging systems. So talk to us about the considerations.
Yes. So a number of research has been done by the National Research Council, not only in Canada, but if you look at it globally, like I said, I've been to a number of EV summits in the past year, and the data in Europe, Asia, in North America is the same. Roughly 80% of the charging will be done at home, right? And so there needs to be an outlay, especially in multifamily buildings, because it's really hard to install EV. Not hard, but it's complicated to install EV charging in high-rise building as opposed to a single-family home where you just install level 2, and then away you go. So 80% of the charging will be done at home. So how do we, and people will be looking at the convenience factor. Um, if you look at the adoption of EVs, it has gone down slightly this year because of the impact of the tariff and lifting of EV mandates, lifting of the rebates that were out there. So, but the long game is still there. I think, like I said, from number of things that I see that is moving in the next 5-10 years. As we put it, is we've been going down the runway. Now it's time for liftoff. So EV charging, EV cars are coming. It's a matter of kind of lifting off and making sure that the infrastructure is
Absolutely. A
there.
mandate may be paused, but the trajectory is
Right.
changed.
I always reference it going back to the dot-com era when dot-com was the thing. Everything was working. And then there was a dot-com boom. So that businesses that survived the dot-com crash were businesses that had a really, really good platform, really good business model, really good value proposition, really good revenue model. Those are the ones that survive, right? So that's what we see in this space. A lot of times, companies in the manufacturing side and installation side coming, but those that don't have a really good solution to EV charging infrastructure, won't be able to play the long game. So that's what we do. We look at and see what's needed, not today, but what's needed in a building when the last owner needs a charger installed, right? What happens to the capacity? We've been to a number of buildings where we see new buildings, like where owners have paid upwards of 10-15,000 for EV charging stall, and out of a 200 unit, there's only capacity for 60 charging, and after that, they can max out. So these things are not well thought out, well designed. So they hit a roadblock, and now they say, so what? So that all needs to be taken into consideration. Like you're not designing the system for the first EV charging equipment, but for the last one, right? So that's what we do. That's what our goal is, to making sure that whatever solution, whatever manufacturer you go with, making sure that there is enough capacity, um, and you are also controlling the ongoing operational cost, and we'll cover that more in the future slides when we talk about peak demand.
Excellent. Yeah, I see you hinted that here as you've got these escalating peak demand charges that could kick in. You do have a good visual on that, so we'll carry on past it for now.
Right.
What are these key design elements?
So the key design elements, a very good question, is because everything goes on the house power. Um, the system has to be fair. So we have a lot of situations where you as an owner may not ever own an EV, and you're not interested in installing an EV equipment in your parking stall, but you may do so and install a parking charging equipment in your stall for future value, just in case you sell your unit. There's, hey, it looks good on the flyer that on the parking stall has got access to charging station. Um, but if you're not an EV owner, you don't want to be subsidizing the cost of energy to someone that has an EV and regularly charges their vehicle every day. You also don't want a fee that it's a flat fee, and if someone is only driving, say, 50 kilometers week, as opposed to someone driving 500 kilometers a week, going all over the lower mainland, because that person is an Uber driver, or a delivery driver, or a courier, or not, just commutes uh, to work from different sites. So if it's a flat fee, then the owner that's not driving as much is now compensating for an owner is driving all over the place, right? So that's why the system is to be fair. So when we design, we got to make sure that there's transparency in cost. So whatever amount of charge or energy you use, an owner uses, they should be paying for that cost of energy, and no other owner or the Strata Corporation should be charged for the cost of energy. So that's what a fair, transparent system is. So it's fair. So if you obviously use more, you pay more, and if you're not an EV owner, you pay zero for towards cost of charging someone else's EV. Then we also, another key element that we've talked about, and we'll get more into detail about that, is an energy management system. So this energy management system is basically the brains behind the entire EV infrastructure. How that works, it basically sits below the house panel, and it's monitoring what the house panel is doing. So we know what the building's peak demand at any given time is. How do we know that? Is because we look at 12 months of hydro, so we'll determine, okay, the building's highest peak demand in the last 12 months, let's say 200 kilowatts. So we will set the energy management system at 200. Now let's take a scenario. Let's look at a scenario when the building is going into peak at 200, and you have, say, 10 EV chargers plugged in. So this energy management system now sees the building going into peak. It's going to tell the chargers, and then these are all intelligent chargers. It communicates through Wi-Fi and LoRa system. The energy management system will tell the chargers, hey, the building is going to peak, throttle it down. So it's basically throttles the chargers down. It does not turn it off completely, throttles it down. And then when there's enough energy, when the demand comes, the capacity comes back, it throttles the charger back up. So the good news about this energy management system is it saves the Strata Corporation thousands and thousands of dollars in operating cost every month. If you do not have an energy management system, and you now you go above your peak demand, which is 200, now you got 10 chargers plugged in, and they driving extra peak demands of, say, 10 kilowatts. You do the math at 10 kilowatts at $12 a kilowatt. That's quite a bit of extra operational cost that the building is going into. And then there's no way to account for that. Who's actually responsible out of the 10 chargers that are plugged in? Who's responsible for this peak demand? So the energy management system keeps the cost of energy below the required rate. And the intent is this is a level 2 charger. It's not a fast charger that you would see out in highways like your Tesla superchargers, where you go in and get a charge in 15-20 minutes, full charge. This is designed to, you come home, you plug your car in, you walk away, you go to sleep, you get up in the morning, you now have a fully charged car. You don't care how long it took, to charge. It's similar to,
this is the happy
plugging
place between the trickle charger and the supercharger, where
similar to plugging your cell phone at night. When you go to bed, you plug in your cell phone. You don't care, it'll take 7 hours, but you get up in the morning, you have a fully charged cell phone. So that's what this idea is, and it kind of ties back in to what we said in the beginning, that 80% of the charging will be done at home. So people are looking for convenience. The days of running around gypsy chargers and fighting the weather, the conditions, lining up for public charging, it's a level 2 public charging, and waiting for the charge it's there. But I think it's the convenience factor. As the EV adoption increases, people will be demanding more and more of the convenience of plugging the vehicle in their parking stall, walking away, and coming back to a fully charged car.
So this is double the voltage and 3 or 4 times the amperage of a standard wall plug, this level 2, and that'll give you a good charge range without that massive draw.
Yes, correct. So if you look at level 1, that's just your basic receptacle in the wall. It's not good to scale for multifamily buildings. If you plug that in, you get 7 kilometers an hour, and to get a fully charged vehicle, you probably need to have your vehicle charged for a couple of days or more than that. The challenge there is, if you have 5 or 6 of these plugged in on that same circuit, it's going to be tripping the circuit. So it's going to be tripping the circuit, and it just frustrates the hell out of Strata Council. So that is not a viable solution. You can scale that. There are solutions out there that uses that, but it's not a in our opinion it's not a viable solution. But we've seen buildings that have installed level one chargers, but in our opinion it's really not the best solution out there. Then you look at your level three. Level three is those Tesla chargers, that superchargers that you see all over the freeway, in malls, and other retail spaces. The challenge on that is, you can't install level three chargers anywhere and everywhere. Those are dictated by, where's the capacity in the grid, and hydro basically will tell you where you can, install those level three chargers, right? And the cost of level three chargers are very high. So what comes down to a level two charger, where it's 120, a level two charger, but that gives you about 50 to 70 kilometers an hour, and that is the most cost effective way to charge your vehicle at home.
That's wonderful. And as you say, this system, when you've designed it, would be ready for 100% EV adoption. So that's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, so our idea is when we go into a building, we want to make sure that every not every parking stall, but every unit that has a parking stall, if a unit has two parking stalls, they will get access to one energized EV ready stall. And that's the definition of BC Hydro's EV ready for the rebate. That a energized junction box within 5 meters of a parking stall. What is EV ready? I mean, EV ready is basically, if you look at that chart there, you look at the just a common parking layout. If you look at the red line, it comes out of the main electrical room and gets distributed across the parking stall. So you would have, and we'll see diagrams of this later. But you will have these conduits running along the parkade, or either in the ceiling on the wall, and that makes the building EV ready, with a junction box terminating within 5 meters of a parking stall. The blue lines are basically, if when an owner needs a EV charging equipment, whether they need it now, 6 months, or 5 years down the road, that they just tap into that energized outlet, and that energized outlet basically is used to provide a EV charging equipment to their parking stall. So that's what we mean by EV ready. The infrastructure, and entire infrastructure is there. You don't have to go back every time and pull cables and run conduits every time an owner requires an EV charger.
And it looks like this is an example of one of those blue lines that's been dragged over to the individual stall. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So in the picture, you'd see a standard EV charging equipment. You'd see, there's an EV charger there. There's a junction box and a cord, the charging cord, and you'll see a wheel stop that's required by electrical code. So that would be at the cost of the owner. Normally the Strata Corporation would pay for the backbone infrastructure, and those are normally done through using CRF money, or doing a combination of levies or CRF or 100% levy. The government has amended the Strata Property Act. If you are using CRF money, you don't need a 3/4 vote. You just need 50 plus 1 to allocate funds from the CRF if you're using it for EV charging infrastructure.
Excellent. And it looks like there could be some rebates available for the chargers and the individual stalls as well.
Yes, so yeah, there are rebates available for up to maximum of 14,000, and we will cover that more when we look at the rebate side. But yes, there's the three components to a rebate. There's rebate for the EV ready plan, rebate for the infrastructure, and rebate for the actual charging equipment.
Fantastic.
What we're looking at, what we're looking at here is an example of an intelligent charging equipment. A lot of times, and these are not, these are not your charging equipment that you could go to Canadian Tire or Home Depot or and order it from Amazon and install. You could probably, use this as a single family home, but in a multi-family building, it's just it's not designed to communicate with the energy management system. So you can see, it's got a power, it's got connectivity. Through the connectivity, it's talking to the energy management system. It's got metering, so it's basically keeping tab of on how much energy you've used, and then that is calculated and then charged back to the owner every month for the cost of energy. And it's got safety features built in as well into it, and then obviously through the energy management system, it's got a energy management control. So when the energy management system throttles the charges down, that's inbuilt into this EV charging equipment that kind of listens to the energy management system and throttles it down or up. So it's an intelligent charging equipment. It's not your ordinary charging equipment that you could buy from any retail outlet.
Fantastic. Let's dive a little bit deeper into this whole energy management system and how it saves condos a significant amount of money if it's got a proper one.
So in BC, we're very fortunate that cost of energy is probably the lowest in the world that I've seen. You probably agree with that. And if you look at California, I think the cost of energy is about 30 to almost 50 cents, because they got so many different utility. So in BC, our cost of energy, especially for startup buildings, was there in a different category, commercial general category. The cost of energy is the same. It's at 11 cents a kilowatt, right? So no matter how much energy you consume, that cost of energy is constant at 11 cents a kilowatt. Where the difference comes is on the peak, the highest peak. So if your peak demand was on any given month was say 200 kilowatts, you will get billed 200 kilowatt times $13. So there are two components to electricity tariffs in BC. Your constant cost of 11 cents, and then your highest peak. Every building has highest peak. If you look at your building, you'll see the peak demand charges because there's other equipments operating in the building, your elevators, your hallway lights, your HVAC. So you'll always have peak demand. What we want to do is with an energy management system, if you have 20 as that slide shows, you have 25 EVs plugged in, and without an energy management system, it's going to drive your peak demand
Right.
up. So now instead of paying $13 a kilowatt at 200 kilowatts, and if your peak demand now hits 250, paying that extra incremental of $50 extra times $13 a kilowatt on those peak demand, right? So it can become very, very expensive. So there you go.
So
Like
instead of letting it bump it up, you're
so
going to shove it out.
yes, you can see, if you have 25 of them plugged in, it's just gonna pump that peak demand up. So as that slide shows, 25 EVs plugged in without an energy management system at 8 kilowatts, that's drawing 2,600 extra a month. Thomas, what does it do to your? And you probably like this. What does it do to your operating budget? Right? It's just gonna 2,600 times 12. You do the math. It's now you're almost hitting 25, 30,000 a month extra in your utilities bill, right?
Yeah. So
What does it do to Strata budget?
That's a
It
lot of
raised the
money.
Strata budget, right?
Right. And you can help by pushing that out, eliminates the $2,600 extra, and allows them to fall under that peak demand while still allowing their vehicles to charge. It's just throttling it at the peak and then stepping it up as capacity improves.
Exactly. Yeah. And like I said, you don't care how long it takes to charge, right? In the morning, you have a fully charged car. Yeah.
But what happens, Sanjay, if you really do care how quickly it charges? What if you're leaving at 3 a.m. for a flight to the airport? Can you do something so that your car gets its charge?
So in the system that we have, very good question. The app allows for a booster, and I think it gives you three of those features every month. So if you on the app click on the booster, it
Fantastic.
kind of boosts the charging rate. Delivers it faster. Kind of,
Right.
it theoretically takes you kind of front of the line, so to speak. But you have three opportunities every month, I believe, to do that. So you
That's
can use that.
wonderful. I was just thinking it was that once off where you really needed it, that perhaps that could be a bit of a nuisance if you get
Yeah,
throttled back. So being
yeah.
able
I mean,
to take a
yeah. I
little
mean,
bit extra on those rare occasions is cool.
yeah. I mean, and if you look at your charging app, whether no matter which vehicle you're driving, it tells you like how many hours to 80% charge. That's what they recommend, that you keep your vehicle charged at 80%, right? And to really, if you really coming in at say 1 o'clock in the morning, and then you got to leave at 2 o'clock, to catch a flight. I guess in those circumstances, you would probably stop at a fast charger to
Right. Yeah.
get a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
more
If you
switch.
knew
Yeah,
you were that tight,
yeah, yeah.
but you've got some really great pictures. I
Yeah.
guess the whole start to finish from inside your
Right.
mechanical room all the way out to
Yeah.
the stall.
Yeah. So this is an example of many of the projects we've done. This is one of them. If you look at the first one on the left, it shows the EMS, Energy Management System, electrical upgrades. That little white little box on the left is the energy management system, is the brain, is the nucleus behind the entire infrastructure. And then, yeah, that's connected to the house panel, and then it's also connected to the EV panel that you see on the right hand side. And then on top of that, you see all these conduits that are coming out of that EV panel in the electrical room. And then that's on the second picture, taken down the parkade, whether on the when we look at it, we see what's the best routing, whether it's on the ceiling, whether it's on the wall. In this case, you see it's very neatly stacked on the ceiling, so all those ones. And then on the third picture, you see that little gray box. Those are the junction box, and they have a capacity of tying 8 different EV charging equipments, and that's the junction box that makes the parking stall EV ready. It's within 5 meters of parking stall. So if you look at the last picture, you see that EV charging equipment was has been tapped into the junction box, and that's how the equipment installed, the charging
Amazing.
equipment.
So
Yeah.
that visual, just kind of eyeballing the number of lines there in the second image with the backbone, could service up to, well, if there's 10 lines and each box can do 80 or so vehicles from one install system like this.
Yeah, we would look at that's when our engineers and designers come in and say, how many junction boxes we need, right? And that's all done when we calculate, when we have all the data as to number of parking stall, how do we distribute it, and that's all calculated before we do the installation.
Fascinating. So you familiar with the rebate programs. Here you've set out some details.
Mhm. Thomas, government does not give anything for free, but this is the best free money we've seen, so to speak. um, you know, British Columbia Strata corporations are fairly lucky, I would say, that this program has been around for the last 5 years, since we've started our company. Um, the program runs every year from April 1st to March 31st. So we're coming up to the 2026 renewal. Hopefully, it'll get renewed. We have not heard anything that it won't be renewed. But there's three components. The first component is the EV Ready plan, which we talked about earlier. So that's the first step. Startup corporations can undertake this and get an EV Ready plan done and see what that EV Ready plan looks like. An EV Ready plan is gonna provide cost estimates, provide solutions, chart type of equipment, type of energy management system, and there's a rebate up to $3,000 available. The second rebate, if the startup corporation chooses to proceed with the infrastructure, the rebate is 120,000 up to a maximum of 127,000 uh, per startup building, or 50 or $600 per parking stall, whichever is less. So that rebate is available. And then we talked about the EV charging stations. Um, there's up to $2,000 per charging station, up to a maximum of 14,000 available for your one-time cost. Now, these charging station rebates are, so if as a building, as a starter, you have your infrastructure in, we can always apply for a second round of funding for in the new fiscal year of up to 14,000. So that gives a little bit of incentive for the owners that are thinking of installing EV chargers to get a little bit of rebate. So Strata Corporation would post a list and say who wants to get in. Or we've also seen that startup corporations would use that rebate and use that and fund direct those funds into the initial infrastructure costs. That's a decision that the owners would need to make. But generally, there's up to 137,000 available to make your building EV ready. Um, the
Fantastic. That's very
process really.
helpful. You've got some great FAQs here, so makes my job easy. Talk about how electricity costs are recovered.
So as we said that cost of energy is around about 11 cents. We suggest that the Strata so ultimately the cost of recovery cost is set by the Strata Council, but all the installs we've done is they have been set at 15 cents. So that's how the cost is recovered. So they pay for the initial cost of energy plus any little bit of overages, a little bit of buffer, and a little bit of processing fee. That's all involved. So that's how the cost is recovered, and it gets automatically charged to the owner that is using the EV charger, and that cost is recovered through their credit card, collected by the monitoring company, and then reimbursed to the startup corporation every 3 months.
Wow, that's excellent. And you've obviously seen a lot as you've looked at a range of different buildings. What are the main problems that can be avoided?
The main problem that can be avoided, the planning has to be correct. You want to make sure that the solution you're choosing is there for the long run. We have seen buildings that have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then we get called in, and there's no more capacity left to service another 10, another 20 or remainder. So that is the most important thing. Is like I said in the beginning, you don't need you have not only have to plan for the first charger that's gonna be installed, you're gonna plan for the last charging equipment that's gonna be installed. That is the most critical issue that we see. A lot of times, startup councils owners would choose a cheaper alternative, but they don't understand that down the road in 2, 5, 10 years time, when the adoption is really increasing, they're going to be running out of capacity because it's not they don't have it properly planned, and they don't have a proper energy management system to manage this. So I would say planning, and making sure that you are there to look at every aspects of the initial installation and the last installation, and then secondly the operational cost, not driving those peak demand through the roof, and then the owners eventually on the hook for those overages.
It looks like you've got an interim solution here for those that have some demand from owners but are not approving the backbone installation that they need. Um, Visitor parking?
Yes, so a lot of buildings we go to that we present the proposal to make the building ever ready. A lot of times, for whatever reasons, they don't get passed. So the interim solution could be to uh, you know facilitate charging at the building, is to install public shared charging, sorry, in visitor parking store. So that alleviates, that kind of provides an interim solution. And once the building is ready to implement at a future date, maybe they would revisit it and say they would want to implement a comprehensive EV ready infrastructure. Then that charger that's installed in the visitor parking stall would turn into a revenue stream for the Strata Council, because you might have, you know, visitors coming to the building, so that could be used. But as an interim solution, yes, um, to alleviate, to accommodate rather charging solutions. If the comprehensive EV ready infrastructure cannot be installed, we would look at a very minimum setting up shared charging in visitor parking stall. Um,
Excellent. And does Electric Asset offer that as a possible alternative?
Yes. So what we do when we do proposals, we offer both alternatives, and there are rebates also available for shared EV charging infrastructure.
Wonderful. You've solved a range of problems. Talk us through them.
Yes, we've talked about it, and I've talked about capacity. Um, cap, um, how do we manage the capacity, given capacity? Like normally, capacity is not an issue, big issue, but how we manage it, and we manage it through a energy management system. Future proofing, one and done. Like, we go in, we run all the conduits from the electrical room, distribute it to the parkades, set up junction boxes. We done. So the only thing is, when a future owner needs a charging station, we just go tap that charging equipment into a junction box. So plan it once and done. We don't want to be going back and running cables, conduits to provide the next 10, 20 stalls with infrastructure. Again, stability and reliability. Making sure, a lot of times what we see in parkades, a lot of times buildings are, when you 6 floors down, you look at your cell phone, you can't even use your cell phone, right? So a lot of time challenges are in the Wi-Fi, the cellular, talking to an energy management system. So we want to make sure that when we go in, we use the most reliable type of communication that can constantly communicate, from the sixth floor parkade all the way to the energy management system that's sitting on the level one electrical room. So stability and reliability is a big issue on that. So we make sure we address that through a military grade low radio frequency communication device.
And you know Strata as well as anyone, so you can help them through this long process.
Yes, we do quite a bit of educational town halls and all that, and our intent is, just to educate and inform them of what are the things that you look for, and we do that at no cost, because we want to make sure that we share our experience with the startup corporations and making sure that they are set up for success. So we any given week we'll do a couple of these town halls or educational information sessions, so as part of our training and educational part of the EV adoption.
Wonderful. And now, for those that are ready to take some action, what do they have to do?
Yeah, first of all, we would recommend that they get an electrical planning report done as a first step, and then what we'll do is when we do the electrical planning report, we will also do the EV ready plan, and then we will file that EV ready plan for the $3,000 rebate. So you're getting two reports for the price of one, plus a 3,000 rebate on the on the EV ready plan. So that would be the first step. Second step would be then we would encourage Tata councils to hold town hall information sessions where we will come and basically talk about the report and talk about it in very simple layman's language term. And then it's if the owners if the council and the owners are ready to go to the next step, then we would facilitate site visit. We would look at all the data, and we'll set up a comprehensive proposal that could be then shared and voted upon at the AGMs or the special general meetings.
Wonderful. So you've got the whole range of services. If it's related to electrical, EV, and the infrastructure, energy management systems, that's all within Electric Assets sphere.
Yes, what we like, we in the energy management space are not just specifically installing EV ready infrastructures. We look at the whole whole scope and with the energy management space. As cities and councils going towards net zero. City of Vancouver has now a new reporting requirement. Buildings, residential buildings that are above 100,000 square feet, next year is going to drop down to 50. So they would be required to file what it's at, and on an annual basis file what is called a GHG, greenhouse gas emission report. I think where that's going is right now it's they're going to be using it as a data, but over the long run, I see that I could be wrong, but here's my 2 cents on it. Here's my prediction on it: that buildings that are not what do you call um, aware, and they are not um, becoming green, and incorporating energy efficiencies, they'll probably be penalized for not dropping or decreasing the gas emissions. That's what I think is going to go. That's where we're going. So yeah, we also do energy audits and greenhouse gas reporting, so encompassing that space in the energy management side.
Great. That's really good. So, everyone that's looking to get in touch, Sanjay's email here is up on screen, sanjay@electricasset.com. Do reach out to him. It sounds like the team would be glad to come out and do some education sessions as well to make sure that they understand what lies ahead for their community. And thanks to some rebates, can bundle some services. So, that's wonderful.
Great. Thank you very much, Thomas. Yeah, if anyone listening has any questions, feel free to reach out.
Wonderful. Thank you again. Next week, we'll be joined by Dave Holtby of Atkinson Landscaping to discuss getting bang for buck when it comes to your strata. So we'll be back again. Thanks, Sanjay.